Not tonight. Good evening. Would you please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Councilman Rogers.
Let us pray. Our God, our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day, for the blessings you've given to each of us. Tonight we pray that you'll be with us and guide us as we continue the budget process. We continue to pray for those serving the armed forces abroad, serving in harm's way. Be with them, guard them, protect them. These things we pray in Christ's name, and amen.
Amen. Councilman Leach, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call to order the special session of the Vienna City Council for March the 19th, 2019. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll, that all members of council are present. Having a quorum, we will proceed. The minutes from the regular council meeting held on March the 14th, 2019 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no objections, then the minutes will stand approved as posted. The report of the treasurer will be given at the first regular session in April. We have no unfinished business this evening. On our agenda this evening is a resolution for the approval of the 2019-2020 general fund and coal severance budgets. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the general fund and coal severance budget.
Before we get into the
excuse me, Mr. Conley.
Yes, sir.
I don't appreciate being interrupted. We will discuss this once we get into this, okay? You'll have an opportunity to do whatever you want.
I wasn't discussing the agenda item. I would like to request an executive session to discuss a personnel matter before we get into the agenda, please.
Okay. Mr. Conley would like an executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, then, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Whatever. Okay. Let the record reflect we went into executive session at 7:03.
So it was a unanimous vote? Yes. Yeah.
Must practice. Oh, a year and a half ago. Okay. Well, right now they're really busy practicing.
Black raspberry cherry. Maybe you get it from that. And I like the
You're taking that?
These make the best. We got there before they had the restaurant.
Yeah, you'll need to store it after you, get to the refrigerator. So, we're bringing roasters and making sauces over there, and you know, always get sand in there. And then the drink stations up. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
No. So she wasn't happy about that. No.
There's 30,000 people on that page.
Sundays, I'll get out of that.
But
Other than that, I would like to get out of that.
And I just been down the road. While summer break started. Oh my God. Well, that's the problem with most of them. You take the call out there, just get it out. You know what I'm I don't know that I saw it.
A few years in, you started accumulating your vacation. And say after 10 years, you got 13 weeks a year paid vacation. Reagan Law, where he lived 2,000 down from that 19. And he was anyway, Raymond. Well, after A lot of good factories right here between Springfield and Vienna. Just really looked at the house.
not sure as to wherever you're gonna tell us. What is it?
But you can still get yes. Oh, yeah, because my internet.
It's getting.
So that it will record.
We're going Mark.
Oh, right, because she was fine, and it wasn't, yeah.
Let the record reflect we came back into session at 7:27 and no decisions were made. It was discussion only. Under new business, we have one item. It's a resolution approving the 2019-2020 general fund and coal severance budgets. This is a resolution approving the 2019-2020 general fund and coal severance budgets. Submission to West Virginia State Tax Commissioner. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that the general fund and coal severance budgets, copies of which are hereto attached for fiscal year 2019-2020, are hereby approved. The Treasurer of the State of Vienna is hereby authorized and directed to forward the same to the West Virginia State Tax Commissioner for approval. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution approving the 2019-2020 general fund and coal severance budgets.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'll start out. You guys know my stance. I don't need to go line by line with this budget. You know, my vote is going to be a no on the budget. There's things in there that I don't like, and you guys know what they are, and there's things in there I like. The problem with this budget, it's going to be approved. It always will be, and it'll be approved next year and the year after that. This is where we need to, as council, I mean, I might be in the minority. I might be with how the citizens of Vienna feel. The things I bring up to the city council are things that are told to me as their representative. Like I say, I might be in the minority. And if I'm in the minority, don't get on my bandwagon or don't support what I'm behind. But I'm against a lot of things. But then again, we, the people of Vienna, we have a chance in 2020 to clean this place up if it needs cleaned up. I mean, we elect these people who sit behind these. In 2020, if you don't like what's going on, then let's make a change. I think change needs to happen. And there's no personal attack on anyone up here, but I think we've been doing as a city the same old year after year. Well, that's the way we always do it. That's what we always put there. So, and that's the way the city has been run, and this budget is an exact example of that. So, without going into detail, change needs to happen, and I hope the people who are regulars here, and you know who you are, I hope you do educate the community when it comes time to vote on your council and mayor positions and record all the positions up here, you know, to think about what they stand for and what their track record is. So I will vote no on the budget.
Councilman Elam, I have a question. You said you had a lot of things in the budget that you don't agree with, or is it a procedure? I mean, you're jumping up on a soapbox right now. We've gone through the health benefits and the health programs. It's been out. It's been open for everything. Please tell me what other things in this budget are you against? I remember last year you were talking about the 60th Street and there was pouring concrete, and you said that you thought all the construction was up there, and you voted on the budget that had that in the budget. There is a sheet with us tonight about all the things that are in this budget. What are the things in this as far as capital reserve that you have questions about?
I didn't say anything about capital reserve.
I voted against an economic development director at one point in time, and that economic development director is in here, and I was outvoted at that time, but I'm not still holding that over everyone here. I'd like to know what other objections you have in this budget, because I think it's a good budget. I don't like seeing all the things that are taken out of it, but I mean, when you have to cut $1.9 million out of it, you know that some things have to be cut. What other things beside the health care, which we've made very public as far as all the things going in, other than that, do you have in this budget you object to?
Well, Bruce, that's why, as we've said before, you're one vote, I'm one vote. If you like the budget, then vote for it. That's all. I mean, there's no reason to discuss. It's going to pass because of
not necessarily.
Okay, well, vote no then. I mean, you can vote with me. I want
to know what your objections are in the budget, because if they're not, you know, something I don't agree with.
What I'm saying is this has already been, it's already been through the budget finance who they met with all the department heads. You know what our input was. I mean, very minimal, but we had a chance, I guess, but I don't know where. It's just, I don't want to get into the whole specifics. I just want to vote no, and you vote how you want to, brother.
Well, what objections do you have on here? Because, I mean, I might jump on board too. I mean, what objections do you have on here other than the health that you discussed before? And I thought it was done very publicly. Mr. Swindon was here trying to explain everything.
That's fine. Bruce, like I say, we're two individuals. You vote however you want to. I'm just saying, I don't need to explain to you. I'm just saying I'm voting against the budget because of some of the money that's in there that doesn't need to be there. We cut the streets.
What are they?
Again.
May I respond to that?
No, you may
I'm
not.
asking him because he's
I
the
don't
one
need to
who's
respond to
saying
Bruce.
that.
I don't need to
What
respond to
are
Bruce.
in the object?
Bruce, you're the one
in
that sat here
budget
for the
you
last
object
20 years
to?
on the same
Gentlemen,
budget.
one at a time, please. Go ahead, Bruce.
What?
Go ahead. One at a time. We're not going to talk over each other. Go ahead. You have
I
the floor.
just want to know what he has objected to other than the health insurance, which
I don't
think
need to
is very
explain to you,
clear.
Bruce. So you vote how you want to. I'll reiterate
Are you
myself.
against the pay raises?
I'm not going to reiterate. I'm just telling you I'm voting against the budget. Bruce.
Excuse me? Are you against the pay raises?
To a certain degree on some of the people. I think about the whole everyone getting $1 an hour raise. I think that some of our employees probably earn more than that, and some employees earn less. You can't tell me for the second straight year everyone deserves $1 an hour raise when there's some people in every employee. I saw talk the same thing last year. You talk about, some people bust their butt at work, and some people, every employer has it. To give a flat out $1 an hour raise to the every employee is wrong because it punishes the good workers. They're all out there. I love the police officers got their raise. I wish we give them more, but that's one of the things I don't like in it. Yeah.
Okay, what else? I mean,
Well, the cut in the
you
streets.
don't want their cars bought. What is it? Tree and beautification. You don't want to plant flowers and trees, or, I mean, what other things in the budget? I mean, do you have that you are objecting to?
Just the whole. The thing is, we're going to lose the B&O tax most likely, but we still continue to run the budget like it's going to be there. We always face up. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We never do that. We keep spending, and that's what I'm saying. When people vote these people in office in 2020, we remember who brings up stuff and who sits there and does nothing. So I just want to make sure the people know that's my whole thing.
Do you know the B&O tax brings in $2.6 million in this budget?
Right.
2.6 million? You want to get rid of 2.6 million? And we're having trouble
Bruce,
getting rid
Bruce,
of
listen to me.
1.9.
I'm not getting rid of $2.9 million, $6 million B&O tax. I heard it's going
Well, that's
away.
what the B&O taxes brings in. It's $2.6 million
I
into
don't
this
need.
budget.
Yeah, that's fine. I knew
You
that.
want to get rid of the B&O taxes?
Bruce, where are you getting that at? Sometimes you go off these little tangents. I don't know where you got that from. Where'd you think about I'm gonna get rid of
It's
$2.6
right here
million?
in the budget, right here. It says 2.6 million B&O tax.
Bruce, no, I'm done. I have nothing to say.
How are you going to get rid of 2.6 million? I mean, I can get rid of, if you take the wages, you take the outside agencies, you take the flowers and trees, you take all that out, you get about $264,000. I mean, you still got $2 million to go. I mean, home rule, I don't know, can we increase the percentage? I don't think so. I think that's done by state, to telling us how much to put out there to tax. I mean, I agree. I don't like B&O tax because I think it's a regressive tax. When we adopted home rule, we also had to cut back on B&O taxes. You understand that, don't you? Or do, I hope. I mean, we had to cut back on it because that's one of the things of home rule. But $2.6 million is going to be kind of hard to replace. Mr. Conley, you were going to say something?
Well, we may not have a choice, and it has nothing to do with any of us sitting in this room whether we get rid of $2.6 million in B&O taxes or not. That's going to be mandated by the state, and when the state mandates that the B&O taxes is gone, then we will then have to figure out where to come up with $2.6 million. And to make a comment that we'll adjust to that when the time comes is just absolutely irresponsible. And for that reason, that's exactly why I also will not support this budget. This budget this year, like the one last year, is $500,000 of an increase over last year. We cannot continue increasing our budget by $500,000 a year. In my opinion, we have in no way looked at this budget in a manner that's conducive with cutting costs and reducing our spending. And I'll just give you some examples. And I'm not talking about getting rid of trucks or the pay raises or the insurance. It's irrelevant. It's the process in general. If you look at building maintenance and equipment, you've got $142,000. You got maintenance equipment. It's $83,000. We got maintenance for automobiles and trucks. It's $55,000. So there's almost $250,000. How much of that money did we spend? And how much of it, Mr. Rogers, How did we spend it? How was that $250,000 drilled into? How did we spend it? What can we do to reduce that spending? Have we talked to the employees? Have we asked them for ideas and suggestions? What can we do? When we get into July, we need to start looking at the next agenda. We need to start looking at the next, I should say, budget year. And when we do that, we start drilling into each one of these line items. That's where we cut our cost. We don't need to just look at a number and say, well, yeah, there's a number. We need to know what that number means. We need to know that that number is a budgeted number that we expect to spend. We need to know how much did we actually spend, and then we need to know what did we spend that money on. Give us a spreadsheet. You got building maintenance and grounds. Last year was $96,300. Show me a spreadsheet that shows me how we spent $96,300. Let's get the employees involved. Let's get all the department heads involved. Let's figure out how we can reduce those costs. You know, it's not a matter of cutting out a truck. It's not a matter of cutting out a car or cutting the pay raise. It's a matter of going through this budget line item by line item. You drill into it. That's the way businesses do it. That's the way we have to do it. So for those reasons, you know, I'm absolutely not in favor of this budget. We absolutely have the B&O coming up. It's gonna, in my opinion, be an issue. I said it was a bullet coming at us. We dodged one bullet. I doubt that we're going to dodge this one. We have done nothing to prepare ourselves for that happening except spend more money. The budget, Bruce, does that. Every line item in the budget does that, Bruce. Not a car, not a truck, not the employee's dollar, not their insurance. Every line item does that, and it's our responsibility to drill in to those line items. We don't do that. We absolutely don't do that, and that's why I am against the budget as is written.
Well, let me say this. I think when our attorney said that the discount we gave to seniors on the police fee was wrong and we were going to have to change it, I think you were the person that said we need to cut $80,000 out of the budget and we need to delete the police fee altogether. Far as I understand, the police fee goes into the general fund, and people said, well, it goes in the general fund or it doesn't go to the police department. Well, it goes into the general fund, but where does the police department get their money? And the police department this year has got $2.9 million coming out of that fund, which generates probably about $90,000. When the county of Wood County passed a bill so that fire fees will be accepted countywide, this council was very fast in removing the fee that we have for the fire department, and that was a way of giving back to our citizens, and I have no problem with that. But the fire department this year has got $714,000 coming out of that same fund, and we're not generating a fee to get that back in any way whatsoever. And home rule gave us some money, yes, I agree, but home rule is not making us flush with money up here, because we still had to cut $1.9 million out of this current budget.
So Bruce, have you looked at the budget? What you have no questions about the budget? I turn it back to you. What do you so everything in the budget you approve, you like every line item? Have you been through it line by line, or what input have you had on this budget over the last 20 budgets you've been at? I know you've been here forever. I mean, what impact did you have this year on this budget? Did you mention anything, or did you bring up issues that you thought, or what was your input with this budget this year?
The budget this year?
Yeah.
Well, I'm upset a lot of the playground equipment was taken out. I've told you that. I expressed my regards to that in the past. It is my understanding that right now the garage on 31st Street, someone is maybe looking at it to potentially buy it, and what the city property is in there or being stored in that building is having to be removed and put into storage outside, and we're paying for that storage. I'm upset about that because I think we could use that ourselves, or we could have approved the building that was proposed through the Parks Department to move the stuff out of 31st Street into that building. You know, those are some of the things, you know, I'm kind of upset about, but, you know, other than that, I mean, we funded outside agencies. I think they're all good agencies and they do good work in the community. We've given our employees raises. We've passed, as far as I understand, we'll pass with this budget a good health program for our employees. I mean, I agree. I mean, cutting out 1.9 million was hard to do, and I applaud Amy and them for doing it. But just to say no just because you want to, I mean, if you have objections, you need to express those like you did on the health care. Okay? I mean, if you disagree with the
But it goes back to the whole
pay
thing, Bruce,
raises and
is,
so forth like that, I mean, if you want us to take them out, I think you need to make a motion or something to take those out.
Did you make a motion on anything that you said you found out you didn't like?
I made a
This is the
motion
first I've
to
heard.
take out the economic development director at
That was
one
last
point in
year's budget.
time.
Yeah, it was last year's. How do you feel about this year?
But
Do you feel we need one this year?
do I feel that we
Do you
have
feel
an
we need
economic
development
development
that's
director?
budgeted in here this
That's
year?
up to you. I'm asking you.
I just asked you, Bruce. What do you feel about that?
I still feel we don't need one because
Um,
there's not enough land in the city to, or things to develop. But
But that's what I'm saying, Bruce. We vote on the budget as a whole, but we talk about individual things. They stay in there because that's how we roll with this place, you know, and that's why we don't go line item by line like Conley was talking about, Councilman Conley. We go one as a whole. You know, we don't dive into the stuff like you're talking about right there. But you're going to approve the budget, even though you don't want the economic development position in there, but you're going to vote yes on the budget.
I think there's good things about the economic development director.
You just
in
said
the-
you're going to vote against it. You don't want them.
in the fact that the mayor can't be in two places at the same time. And really, I think the economic development director should be combined with like a community development director and be like two things.
Well, we should have
and
talked
not
about
just
that before
one.
the budget came out. That's what this stuff we're supposed to be talking about.
All right. Any more comments?
I have something brief.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Jim.
go
Go ahead, Jim.
You know, everyone up here has one vote, and everybody up here is entitled to their opinion, which is what you're expressing, is
Agree.
simply opinion.
Yes, sir.
Until we see from history how things work out, we don't know who's going to be right. You know, there's good arguments for economic development and what we've seen go on in the city and so on, but this kind of goes back to something that we've talked about with respect to the health insurance, and I think generally, with respect to the philosophy of the city of Vienna, all right? And so we have a certain standard of living in Vienna. We have our citizens who elected us, who expect certain goods and services to be provided. The state requires us to have a balanced budget. And this year, everybody in council, our finance director has continually and often and every time requested, put in the Dropbox, the check register. The check register is every transaction that happens in this city, and it's available for you to look at and drill down. You know, in speaking with department heads, which I've done and I think others have as well, they had to make these tough decisions, you know, and balance what we can afford and what has to go. And those choices have been made. Nobody up here, there are things in this budget that if I had a preference, I might do a little bit differently, but in general, I'm satisfied and I trust the department heads and the recommendations they're making. And sometimes you know, as a council, we have to defer to some judgment. Other times we express ourselves if there's something we're absolutely against or something we're absolutely for. I tend to express more what I'm for. Okay, I was for the Manville project. I was for looking at our employee compensation as a whole, not just as a health insurance line item. So everybody up here, you know, I'm prepared to vote yes on this budget, and I'm doing it because I agree with the leadership that this city has done over the last 20 years. I agree with the research that I've done that shows that the city of Vienna outperforms virtually every other city in the state of West Virginia. And as far as the boogeymen, like, are we going to eliminate B&O at the state level? I don't know that. Roger doesn't know that. Mike doesn't know that. And so, yeah, you know, when you say, well, cross the bridge, is that putting your head in the sand, like, you know, or is it simply saying we don't have enough information to make a decision? We have to do a balanced budget. We are taking nothing out of our capital reserve. We returned from last year's budget in unencumbered funds $442,000, which is about what the difference is in the budget from last year. I hope I said that right. But the is that right, Amy? Well, maybe a change, but we returned a substantial amount, but roughly. And again, not all of these funds, but if we don't look forward, and if our department heads don't say, we have to plan for this contingency, then what are we doing instead? We're coming back here and looking for budget revisions and trying to find money as opposed to doing the proper city planning that I think that our administration in this city does a pretty good job. So again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think that Mike, Roger, and I are just going to agree to disagree on a number of things, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. But so as long as everybody's putting in their 2 cents, that's mine with respect to the 2019-20 budget.
I just want to make a comment. Councilman Rogers mentioned the fire department budget, and I'm going to ask the chief and Amy to help me if I'm wrong, and I don't think I am. The fire department budget is listed there, but as we receive revenue from the county fire fee, that money is backed out of the overall city budget, or the line items for the fire department.
The fire fee is budgeted as a revenue line item.
Okay.
Okay. So it's appropriated to the fire department in their expenses, but it comes in as a revenue line item. You'll see it as fire fee on your spreadsheet. Where it's
Right. I understand that. Yeah.
But it is appropriated because by law, that has to go to the fire department.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. I'll call for the question.
I have
then.
one more thing, please.
Mr. Conley.
Last week, when we was voting on the insurance, Councilman Elam had to recuse himself from the room due to a conflict of interest, and he actually at that time brought up a point about a potential, and Attorney Skogstad explained that well, potential conflict of interest with the mayor and with Recorder Rogers being able to vote for their insurance package as well as their pay raise. And when I say there, I should say Kathy's pay raise as recorder. Now, I've had numerous conversations with the Secretary of State's office. I've had numerous conversations with the Ethics Committee. I've had numerous conversations with attorneys associated with the legislature. Now, there is a law that says that an elected official cannot have financial gain because of a vote that they may make. But there is, as Mr. Skogstad explained, there is an exception to that law that says if there is a group of 5 or more that they can vote. Now, as I talked to the Secretary of State's office and the Ethics Committee, they're, don't necessarily agree with that, but, that's the way it's written. And, the way that we change that is through a legislative process. Well, I did have conversations with attorneys associated with the legislature, and I explained the situation. So, as Paul Harvey would say, let's talk about the rest of the story. What we're doing right now is not the way that law was intended to be. And to quote them, if it's being used that way, it's being used and abused. And I'll give the example that they gave me. When that exception was put in for the exception of 5, and I might add that 5 was just a number that they chose. There was really no relevance to 5. It could have been 50, it could have been 100. But there was a county commissioner that did not want to vote on a fire fee. He didn't want his name associated to the vote, yay or nay. So he used that law and said, I have a conflict because I have a family member that works for the fire department. So shortly after that happened, the legislature enacted this exception. And that exception was put in there to say, you, Mr. County Commissioner, will vote. You will do your job as you were elected to do. It in no way was put in there to say, you have permission to vote for your raise or any other financial gain, that you're clearly having financial gain and is clearly something that it's not intended to be. So for that reason, even though it is something that today is legal, but I suspect in the near future you're going to see that changed, it's not the right thing to do and it's not the ethical thing to do. I would like to ask that Mayor Rapp and Recorder Smith recuse themselves from this vote.
I'd like to add something to that. Under City Council budget 410, there is a line item 41006. It says retirement expense. There are some council members that are receiving retirement benefits, and if you want them to recluse themselves, anyone who is a council member receiving retirement expenses, there's $1,600, and they should also recluse themselves.
That's not being discussed as a potential raise.
Can I just point something out? We're not voting on a pay raise this evening, we're voting on the budget. The pay raise will come up at a different time down the road. This is building the framework. The money will be in the line items. If you choose not to pass the pay raise down the line, we'll take it out, we'll move it to whatever you want to move it to. But we are not voting on a pay raise tonight, we are voting on a budget.
According to the attorneys with the legislature, if you're voting on a raise within a budget, you're actually voting for your raise.
Here's what I have to say about this. You know, first of all, it's continued blindside. If you're investigating something that
It's called research.
Okay, you can call it whatever you want to. But there's also something called disclosure, all right? And when you're going around and trying to get this information together, and then you come into these meetings and you spring it on us, just like you did with the health insurance packets, that you went and you requested those, and then you start trying to refer to those, and we don't even see what you're talking about. You know, that's in my practice, that's what's called trial by ambush, and you're not allowed to do that. And that's what you're attempting again here tonight. You've gone and done research on an issue purporting to say that these lawyers are saying this. Well, I don't have confidence in what you're saying, that it's in fact correct. I didn't have an opportunity to vet it or to challenge it or to consider it myself. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that your motion is not well founded and should be rejected. I don't even think, I mean, I'd ask for our city attorney for an opinion, but I don't think it's even properly brought.
Well, let me speak for myself. I won't speak for Mrs. Smith. She can certainly do whatever she chooses. I've heard many of the stories that Roger's talked about, but they weren't told in the same manner that he's told them this evening. And so my faith is in Mr. Skogstad, who has researched this several times, and I will be voting tonight. My salary is set when I'm elected, so I am not getting a pay raise. So unfortunately, Mr. Connolly, you're entitled to your opinion, but I have a lot more faith in Mr. Skogstad and knowing him than I do these unnamed sources and stories that you continue to bring to us. I serve on the Municipal League Board of Directors, which represents every city in the state of West Virginia. And I can tell you that there has not been one word of discussion about the B&O tax. And I guarantee you that if the B&O tax was being discussed, you would have 230 cities in the state of West Virginia very upset. And so I discount your sources or wherever it is you're getting this information. But at any rate, I will not recuse myself. I will be voting based on my information that Mr. Skogstad has provided.
You didn't listen to the State of the Union address and the governor of the state of West Virginia then?
I'd like to call for the question.
I have one comment.
Well, Bruce, or excuse me, Kathy, she had a comment before that. Am I correct?
Yes.
She was first?
Yes, yeah. I just want you to know that I have recused myself. When I have done that, I have left the room. I have gone into that room. I have shut the door. I haven't stood in the doorway listening to the vote or the conversation. I have recused myself on a number of occasions. I do intend to vote on this. I have checked. I would not, as an elected person, do something in my position that the city attorney who represents the city says don't do. I would not do that. That is not why I was elected. If you'll look, I received quite a large number of votes. That tells me that people trust me sitting here as a council person. Now, until such time that the state changes that by legal legislation, I will vote on the things that I can vote on here that are affected as a group. If it comes to something that I specifically, is addressed to me specifically, I will again recuse myself.
The question's been called. The motion on the floor is the approval of the resolution approving the 2019-2020 general fund and coal severance budgets, submission to the West Virginia State Tax Commissioner. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that the general fund and coal severance budgets, copies of which are attached hereto for fiscal year 2019-2020, are hereby approved. The Treasurer of the City of Vienna is hereby authorized and directed to forward the same to the West Virginia State Tax Commissioner for approval. All those in favor of the resolution approving the 2019-2020 general fund and coal severance budgets, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, let the record reflect it passes 5-2. That concludes our agenda this evening. We'll now go to council comments. Mr. Skogstad, you have something?
Please. When Councilperson Smith, when Recorder Smith came back to the city, one of the things that I had concern about was came back to work for the city as an employee, and while serving at the same time as recorder, I had some concerns, and I asked for guidance specifically on what she was allowed to participate in. I asked specifically the Ethics Commission what her role could be, what she could vote on, and so forth. Councilperson Smith or Recorder Smith can vote on any issue that does not affect her specifically, but affects a class of people. So if she, and by say class of people, I mean a group of 5 or more. She works for the police department. She may not be able to advocate individually for the police department, but she can certainly vote on legislation, the budget, and so forth that may affect the police department. She does not have to recuse herself from the vote. Councilman Elam, when he obtained employment through Highmark, I asked the same question because I have an obligation not to any individual but to the city as a whole. And my question was essentially the same. What things can Councilman Elam participate in? I was instructed and forwarded an opinion to Mr. Elam, just as I had forwarded an opinion to Ms. Smith, and just as I had reviewed the 2014 ruling from the Ethics Commission on a similar issue. So the law is, those individuals can vote on things that affect the city as a whole and not that can affect them individually. Councilpersons who are elected cannot vote during the term of their service to change their pay. The mayor nor council may vote to give themselves raises while they're sitting. They may vote to do it the next term. That was an issue because somebody brought up about somehow it was brought up that the mayor was getting a pay raise. By law, he can't do that. So just by the fact that Councilman Elam, Recorder Smith, or Mayor Rapp voted on the budget does not make them violative of any West Virginia law, and there are Ethics Commission's opinions that support the same.
Thank you. Council comments.
I got a quick one, real quick. Couple things. Kathy, you pointed me out. I'm sorry I didn't go around the door and shut the door like you did. I didn't know. I was just told to leave the room, so I left the room, and I was kind of nitpicky where I stood, whatever. So that's near here nor there. So, excuse me.
Nitpicky? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, why you brought that
That's
up?
fine.
It's silly you brought it up. But anyway, and then the other thing is, I know we have these things called, and Russ, I talked to you about before, professional services. I think there's like $111,000 in the budget for professional services. Now that's money that is spent without receiving a bid on. Is that correct? Tell me, you can educate me on that right there.
Under our ordinance, there's an ordinance that says that you can go outside of the bid process in order to obtain certain professional services, accounting, engineering, surveyors, consulting, financial planning, attorneys. I used to be under the professional services line item until the IRS decided to change my status. So yes, there are things that are set out in our ordinance that say what professional services are.
Okay, so those don't go out to bid. That's the money we spend. I mean, when people give us quotes for a project, how does that work? We don't bid those out, is that my
Well,
understanding?
what I've recommended in the past was you do a request for professional services. And what you do is you solicit by way of an ad. You say, I have this project that needs to be completed. So X project that needs to be completed. In order to complete X project, I need people of, certain skills. So for example, health insurance. I need somebody that can act as a broker for health insurance. And then you do a request for professional services, you interview those people, you create a matrix, and then you're supposed to go through that matrix and interviewing them. And then based on how they score, you can determine who it is that you want to do that. That's not a process that is set out in our ordinances. That is something that I've suggested just to make sure that you're putting the information out there to be solicited. You can weigh the matrix however you want. You can have geographical proximity, be worth a certain amount, experience, past conduct, references, recommendations, and the like. That's how I've recommended in the past. That is not something that's required by our ordinance.
Okay, so I mean, is there a chance to save money if you did put those processes out to bid, or what is that?
I have a good example, Mike. So for example, this past year, we got involved with the opioid litigation, okay? There are very few law firms that would be qualified to prosecute. I would not be, okay? For example, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the financing. So there are examples where you can't put it out for bid, something like that. It has to be based on, so I think that what Russ is suggesting makes sense, that you get a list of qualified, and then, but there's a reason professional services are exempted from the bid process. It's not a skid steer. It's not a truck. So there's judgment involved.
Right. You may have people that on paper look good, but don't necessarily when they interview look good, or they have more experience, or they have a proposal that works that you may think works better. For example, the opioid litigation, where the idea was to have one firm wanted all of the litigation to happen in federal court, the other believed that the litigation could be remanded back to state court, and you decide where you think, based on their recommendations, your best avenue is, where you think you're going to get the best return. So no, the matrix doesn't always work, but it's one way to do it. But if you're asking, it is by our ordinance.
Other council comments? Yes, sir, Bruce.
Okay, the budget process has to be done, or the balanced budget has to be in by the 28th, is that right? And that's the reason why we're having a meeting on Thursday, the 21st, is that right?
No, sir, Bruce, we're done.
Excuse me?
We are done. The budget has been approved. Amy can now submit it. We are done.
Okay, we're done.
And we will cancel the meeting on Thursday. We
The
don't need it.
21st, it's canceled?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We don't need it. That was a backup. We were done.
That's fine, thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Conley?
Yeah, Mayor, quick question, and it's a follow-up to Councilman Elam. I guess my question would be, with the professional services, even though we do have the ordinance that says that does not need to go out for bid, could we not use that same matrix if we did a bid process and allowed other people to be included in the bid? I mean, can't we get a bid of 3 people and use the matrix to determine which one of them would be the most qualified for that? That's just a question and a comment. The other thing that I'd like to see us look at, kind of along the same lines as well, way too often we have bids that are just single bids only. I would like to see us do a ordinance that basically rejects a single bid, and if we have a single bid only, that we put it back out for rebid. I know, there's an awful lot of places and a lot of cities and municipalities do that. There's some that do it the same way we're doing it. But in my opinion, I think we would be better served if we made sure we always had, in any case and scenario, more than a single bid, if at all possible.
We don't have to accept the bids that comes back in. And if it is a West Virginia firm, we can pick it, because in our ordinance it says if a West Virginia firm comes in at maybe a higher bid, we can pick them because they do business in West Virginia. And I think we approved that, and I believe that's part of our ordinance. No, we don't have to.
And that's not what I'm alluding to. I'm talking about if we get just a single bid, I would like to see us not accept that bid and go back out to rebid for the same project.
Roger, how far would we take that? I mean,
One time.
One time?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much the norm.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right. Meeting adjourned.
Because I followed the rules.
They told me how to close the door.
Guys, there's still, I think it's still streaming.
Yeah, I,
Everyone's talking about being ethical and stuff. Bring that up.